All right. Welcome everyone to the SB Act Regional Action Plan all-call meeting. This meeting is basically going to be a quarterly meeting of all of our partners that are connected with our regional action groups. That includes State Street Downtown, East Side, and Waterfront. The purpose of the Regional Action Plan meetings is both to address the impacts of homelessness on the individuals and families experiencing homelessness and come up with long-term solutions to help more people with successful street exits, whether those be transitional or permanent, but also to work on some of the impacts that are happening within the community to our residents, business owners, hotel owners as well. So this meeting came about primarily because of a desire from the community to learn about how to de-escalate situations, how to work more closely with law enforcement and behavioral wellness, understand some of the issues that people on the streets are facing day to day, and also a great opportunity to learn about NOAA's Anchorage and the work being done to help our young people who are experiencing homelessness or who are at risk. So if you wouldn't mind, in between the presentations, making sure you're muted, we will have 3 presentations of about 20 minutes each, and then I'm hoping to have 10 minutes open for questions in between the presentations. So I think I've talked with all of our presenters that I don't want to be a bad guy and cut you off, but about 30 minutes for each presentation is what you'll kind of have. So I don't want to waste very much time outside of having the presentations happen. If you wouldn't mind, if you're on the call today, if you wouldn't mind, so we can capture in the minutes, if you wouldn't mind putting your information in the chat box for Landon, who's going to be running the meeting today, that would be great. Also wanted to let you know that we are recording this meeting because I know there are some people who cannot make this time, and we want to make it available for the community at large, be able to forward this valuable information out as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in with our first presenters. And I've sent some of you received an email, some of you may be getting this without receiving the email, but I've also sent out some information on each of our presenters as well. So I want to introduce Lisa Kanakani, who's a clinical supervisor for NOAA's Anchorage, and also Amy Buckner, who is the residential program director. And they're going to start us off with a presentation on the work of NOAA's Anchorage. So Landon, I think, is going to be able to share the PowerPoint. Okay. And I'm going to hand it over to Amy and to Lisa, and you should be able to share.
Great. Amy, hello? Do you want to start us off?
Sure. I'll just go by introducing myself. So my name's Amy Buckner. I'm the residential program director at NOAA's Anchorage Youth Shelter. We're located in Santa Barbara, right near downtown transit station. I've been here for about a year, and I work very closely with Lisa, and we are excited to be able to share about it. Thank you all for having us.
Yeah, my name is Lisa Kanakani, and I'm a marriage and family therapist. I am the clinical supervisor and program developer for NOAA's and some of the street outreach in my home programs as well. I do clinical supervision for the staff over there, and I'm also involved in several other kind of sexual exploitation efforts going throughout the county. I should say anti-sexual exploitation efforts. And I've been doing this for several years. I also provide training and things like that. And I work with many different partners. So thank you for letting us come and share a little bit about all the exciting stuff we're doing at NOAA's right now.
All right, so just a little bit of background. So NOAA's Anchorage is part of the Youth and Family Services branch of the Channel Islands YMCA. We consist of 4 different programs, including NOAA's Anchorage. So St. George Youth Center, which is located in Isla Vista, is an after-school programming and supportive services for children 10 to 17 years old. They also have been doing a lot of COVID-friendly, Zumba in the park, bike rides, stuff like that throughout the pandemic, which has been really nice to have for our youth out in Isla Vista. We'll get to more of the nitty gritty of NOAA's Anchorage in just a little bit. Our street outreach team is co-located at NOAA's Anchorage. So they do daily walks around downtown Santa Barbara where they have a backpack full of supplies, they have food, hygiene supplies, and then just information and resources that they can give to youth that look like they might be in need of a little bit of support. They also operate the drop-in center, which is open 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. 7 days a week. My Home is our transitional aged youth program. So it's located at 422 East Coda Street. They do intensive case management and then also housing supportive services. Their population is typically 16 to 24 years old. All right. So NOAA's Anchorage. So we're a home-based shelter. Like I said, we're located right near downtown Santa Barbara, only 2 blocks from the transit center. So it's really accessible to all youth. We are technically a community care licensed youth homelessness prevention center, which is new legislation that changed just about a year ago. All of our services are confidential and free. And then they include shelter, case management, crisis mediation, drop-in services, clinical and therapeutic services, and community collaboration and referrals. And we'll kind of dive into those deeper in these next slides. Lisa, do you want to?
Sure, yeah, so sure. So the populations that we serve, I mean, technically we will not turn any family away. We will try to provide services for anyone. And if we can't do that, we will walk through the process, whatever, call the people that we know and our partners, trying to get support for them. But since we are a 24/7 service, we answer our phone every time, every day. So we often get people calling that are 26, 28, 29, or parents that are in their 30s and 40s and need to talk. And again, we try to do our best to serve everyone, but we try to focus, our main focus is on youth and families that are experiencing conflict and crisis. And that crisis, as those of you who work in this field know, that crisis can mean a lot of things. And so I'm not going to list all of those things, but we are very flexible, and we again try to make it a no to low barrier to treatment with us. So we want to serve everybody and anybody that needs us if we can. Of course, we're looking at youth, trying to focus on youth that are experiencing homelessness or housing instability. And a lot of youth that engage in runaway behaviors as like a coping mechanism, which is the next one down. Oftentimes that's because their house is unstable, whether that's emotionally unstable, financially unstable, but there's a lot of things that lead to youth fleeing their home, looking for love, purpose, and belonging out there on the streets. But obviously we know that often puts them at higher risk. So we also obviously work with youth that people typically call runaway youth. I don't like that term because it makes it sound like they're making a bad choice or they're a delinquent. Often our youth are leaving home because it is not safe emotionally or physically for them there. And again, there's people out there on the streets that will hurt them too. So we do realize that they're out of the fire into the frying pan in that option, but I really look at runaway as like a coping mechanism. And then also our youth are getting kicked out of their houses too. They have parents that feel like they can't manage them, or that the other siblings are getting influenced, or they just feel overwhelmed. And so parents sometimes ask the kids to leave. So we do get those as well. We often work with youth that are system involved, and most of our youth are multi-system involved. So it's very difficult to navigate between those different organizations and programs, and they all have sort of different approaches. So we really try to be like a very neutral party. We really try to advocate. We've been building relationships, and we have some really good relationships with our partners. And so we can make phone calls and do multi-team meetings and trying to really work through all of the systems, because oftentimes our families come in and they're just very overwhelmed by the systems, how to get in, how to get services, what's going on. And sometimes they're also afraid that they're going to get in trouble, or their families are going to get in trouble, things like that. So we really try to help them there. And again, then we work with youth that are typically underrepresented or feel marginalized, like the LGBTQIA population. I know that's a mouthful, but we really try to be friendly, open, welcoming, very culturally focused about what we do, a non-shaming, non-blaming. So we really want to include all of them to come in and work with us regardless of that. And then we often get youth that are either at risk of or have been confirmed commercially sexually exploited. And those are the 26 and under. They all have this population has very unique needs and come with unique challenges in terms of trying to get placement, supports, securing the safety and all of those kinds of things. But that's generally our populations. And then on top of that, we work with a sibling that's in there or a friend we just really try to extend. And if there's natural supports or people that are involved in the conflict stuff, we really try to extend out and provide services for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you want me to take this?
Sure.
Okay. So, and our approach is really team-based care model. And I think, having worked with behavioral wellness for 20 years until I retired a couple of years ago, this is the way that we've always worked over there. And it can be very challenging because it's a lot of schedules, a lot of people, a lot of different obligations from each of the agencies, but it really is the best way to serve, especially youth. They need a lot of adults in their lives to help them. So we really try to do a team-based care model. And at NOAA's in particular, we try never to leave any staff by themselves for any length of time because we know even if there's only one youth in the home or something, we know that we really want that team-based approach. It reduces burnout. It also makes us more effective. And then it helps with across agencies with this continuity of care and non-duplication of services. And then obviously we are a trauma-informed care approach and supports everything we do. We look through that trauma lens and, instead of what's wrong with you, what happened to you. Really, again, trying to make sure that everybody on our team is very aware of the effects of trauma in the brain, trauma in relationships, trauma. I mean, all of just that whole development process makes it even more difficult. So we might have a 16-year-old that had some sort of trauma at 5, but if they've not had any services and they've had these trauma symptoms all through their lives, most likely they have not been able to reach a lot of the building blocks that they need to have healthy relationships and be successful at school or jobs or any of those kinds of things. So there's a lot of work that has to go on there. We do have our 5 guiding principles, which is safety, choice, collaboration, trustworthiness, and empowerment. And by the way, we also have to, those are our as the staff, those are our guiding principles as well. We also take an oath to hold up exactly what we ask the youth to do because we also need to have that good character. We have to be safe. We have to have choice, all of those things. So we really try to embody the same things that we provide to the youth. Our main sort of guiding clinical practice is called positive youth development. And that is our grantor. This is one of the requirements of the funding source that we got through the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act. And basically, it's a process to engage young people in services where they do not feel like they're being told what to do, that there's a punitive or authoritative approach. We really want to hear from them. We include them in all decision-making processes. We help guide them through conflict resolution and problem solving, and we give them opportunities to practice leadership, to make amends, to take responsibility, to build their character, all those things, versus telling them what to do or kind of, doing this when they do things that maybe we don't like so much or we feel is a bad choice. But we really try to take this approach of really empowering the youth to make good decisions with our guidance. And part of the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act that we get our funding source from recognized through a lot of research that youth will not come to shelters where it's highly punitive or authoritative, and they can't have their cell phones, and they are told what to do every second, and they're handled sort of in a kind of more military style discipline, and they get kicked out easy. We are very like, let's work through this and let's make choices together. We don't take things out of their hands and things like that outside of a safety issue. So we really want them to come, even if they just want to hang out and charge up their cell phones or use our laptops. We really try to make it so it's easy and fun, and there's not adults telling them what to do. And so our youth usually like to come back, and it's great. And we focus on the 8 C's of positive youth development. This is us building with the youth these different characteristics that really can launch somebody into a beautiful life and being a really good person. And again, we have to uphold these 2 as staff, which is competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, control, and courage. And these are things that we just sort of weave in through our programming every day, and also how we as staff implement and implement supports and also engage with the youth. And we work on a harm reduction. So it's like, did you do a little bit better this time than you did yesterday? We celebrate those a lot. We really focus on the returns versus the relapses. And we have this very welcoming open door. If their appointment was at 3, but they showed up at 3:45, we're like, thank you for coming for the last 15 minutes. We gotcha. They don't get kicked out for things like that. We would encourage them to attend when they say they are, but we don't take a punitive approach there. And then again, I think I've just weaved that through many times, because the most important thing for our youth, we hear this over and over again, and then the research supports this, is that when it's punitive and authoritative, it is not effective. In fact, the youth will be very hesitant to engage, and they also will feel kind of, sometimes, this is a strong word, but this is something that happens, is they will feel traumatized by the people that are there to help them, because there's such a punitive authoritative approach. It feels very much like some of the things that they're trying to run away from or get away from.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of to break down our services, we'll start with the shelter services, which are, as Lisa mentioned, we're open 24/7, 365 days out of the year. The facility itself has 4 rooms, which each have 2 beds. So there's a total of 8 beds. Currently, our capacity is cut in half, so that way each youth has their own space within the house. We also have a full kitchen, a full living room filled with Netflix and a Wii and Just Dance, and a staff office, or 2 staff offices, and then a counseling room too. So that's where we can meet with youth one-on-one, and we can also meet with the youth and their families, either in the counseling room or in our drop-in center. One of the biggest or most important things that we emphasize with all youth and families, or whoever is working with the youth at that time, is that our services are voluntary. Again, that takes away that authoritarian kind of approach, is that we want to make sure that youth realize that our front door is open. If they decide that they want to leave, rather than telling them that they're not allowed to, we say, okay, let's come up with a safety plan. Do you have our numbers programmed into your phone? Do you have a safe adult that you're going to be going with? Do you have the directions back here? Do you need bus coins? So that way they know that we're not trying to control their decisions. Rather, we're just trying to make sure that they identify what's safe and what's best for them. Lisa also mentioned our services are all low to no barrier. We don't require that youth do an intensive assessment period. There's no waiting time. Our services are immediate, whether they're via phone, via telehealth, or in person. So youth are able to just go to the shelter if they're not sure what services might be available to them.
And they don't have to be sober, and they don't have to agree to every part of our program or anything. So we really just try to take them in where they are and work with them through that process.
Yeah, that's a really great point, is if a youth, because we have contracts that we go over with the youth that just identify different agreements, different guidelines that we have at the shelter. And we invite the youth at those times to discuss those, to question our contracts, to negotiate what works best with them, and to share what works for them. So that way we can adapt to make sure that we're giving them the support that they need. And part of that too is that youth may be signed in by their legal guardian, sure, but also a law enforcement officer or probation officer, a social worker. This is really important because sometimes youth might not find their legal guardian safe, or we might not be able to access their legal guardian because they either left or are just unable to get a hold of. And so we're able to use other systems in place to help them receive those residential services. Again, our services are completely confidential with the exception of shelter services. So if a youth chooses that they do want to stay, we just need to have one of these sources sign them in. So that way we know that, or that way the systems know that they're safe and that they're being cared for. Once they get to the shelter, within 24 hours to 48 hours, every youth receives an individual service plan and then a self-care support plan, which is our version of a safety plan, which breaks down, some of those emotional triggers that might be happening, some supportive people, supportive pets, supportive places. So that way youth, and then also some coping skills. And that's used not only as a guide for developing the individual service plan, which they can develop more skills while they're at the shelter, but also just if they decide to leave at any time, there's already something in place that we can refer them to. All right, so part of our individual service plan that all youth receive as, that are receiving residential services, these are also available to all youth that are dropping in. So even if youth are just calling in and they don't really have the time to come in or the resources to come in, these are all offered via phone, telehealth, and in person. Every single thing is individualized and strengths-based. I think it's impossible to write just the amount of different services that we do offer and we support with. Even if there's something that we don't know, staff are always willing and always trying their best to figure out the answer, or at least sit down with the youth and help them find the answer.
Yeah, and I think we also want our partners to know that if you have a youth that has some unique challenges or needs, just please call us and we'll try to work something out and figure out if we're not the ones to be able to do that, we might be able to hook them up with somebody that can. We've been really successful with linkage there.
Yeah, definitely. I think that no matter what, we'll do our best, whether that's a referral or us just hopping on the computer and learning alongside the youth. But these are the typical services, which are housing, education, vocational, relationship and communication, and then also medical support too. All right, Lisa, you want to take this one?
Yeah, and so part of the work that we do is to reduce the chance of the youth being out of the home or the house being unstable, whether it's financial or emotional. Typically we see there's a real strong emotional component that's included in that crisis or the housing instability. So we really want to jump in as soon as possible and do crisis mediation. And again, we really, we bring the caretakers and the youth to the table, including the siblings or any extended family that is part of the process. And we really worked in a quick and like on the spot way to reduce that conflict, because it's the conflict that ends up where those blow-ups happen and some of the more riskier stuff that goes on, where the youth might leave the house or be told to leave or gets arrested or whatever happens there. So we really try to provide that. And because of our clinical program, which we'll get into, we now have licensed interns that I supervise. So those families that have even like higher level of need due to mental health issues or alcohol and drug or domestic violence or myriad of other things that our support or typical support staff, it would be beyond their scope. We can kind of step in and do that. And we don't just do the one time a week 50-minute sessions. We will contact them all through the week. They can call us any time of the day. We do check-ins, we do encouragement. We really set it up so that it feels good and works with the family. We let them tell us what they need and what they can attend and what they can't. Sometimes they only want to give us 10 or 15 minutes. We'll take it. We'll take anything that they are willing to work with us on. And so the de-escalation and conflict kind of resolution based, everything is focusing on what's going on, what's the core problem, what have you tried, what's not working, and what could work. And we just keep moving through this process with them to sort of take away the shame and the blame and sort of the mystery about it, because conflict resolution has some pretty basic researched steps that actually work really well if people kind of follow them and understand. So in the process, we're actually teaching the families to do this themselves so they don't feel like they're dependent on us every time something goes wrong. We obviously offer individual support too. So we might have a youth that is participating in our services or staying with us in the shelter, but let's say they have a 12 sibling in the house, or mom and dad are really struggling with their relationship. We will provide couples counseling. We will provide the sister or brother with a therapist or a counselor or a support staff or contact. We never want anybody to feel left out. And I think oftentimes that identified patient, that client, the IP that we call them, ends up feeling bad, like they're the reason to all the problems. Or sometimes the family feels like, hey, why don't we get any attention? Why aren't we getting help too? So we really want to mitigate that. And I think we've done a really good job there. So we service sort of the whole family. Anybody who wants to come in, they can come. And then again, we just like, hey, we are here. We're not gonna be picky about how you come. We just want you to come. So whether it's on the phone, whether it's in an email, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, we'll take any and all of it. Obviously, we like face-to-face contact because we do know that seems to have the best outcome when you have the person right there. But if that stops them from being able to come in, or they can't make it in, I'll take any of the other things. So we sort of really make sure that we offer a really wide variety. And because we're 24/7, we also have any time that you need. We will try to make that happen. And we do late night appointments. We do weekend stuff. We really try to meet the families where they are. And then again, we're just always there, immediate, 24/7. They can always reach out. Somebody will always be answering our phone.
Yeah, and in the interest of time, I think we can, we have all of our drop-in services, their basic needs services, but I do think that we should really stress the clinical approach to end off on. And
there we go.
Lisa, I'll let you kind of wrap it up with this slide.
Yes, thank you. And so one of the things that's new to NOAA's and My Home and Street Outreach is this really strong clinical therapeutic services. So we actually do provide therapy, not just sort of clinical support from paraprofessionals. And again, this is not to say that is not important, because we couldn't do what we do without them. This is a true multi-collaborative team approach. But now we have interns that are supervised by me that are trained to do that deeper level therapy, family work. It's not just conflict mediation that goes beyond that gets to some of these traumas and these generational kind of behavioral patterns and engagement stuff that just has not been working for the family. And right now we have 2 interns and 1 trainee. We are looking to partner with some of our universities to grab a couple other, but all of our supports are evidence-based, DBT, trauma-focused CBT, gender-specific care, the biopsychosocial model, which we've all explained. A lot of our youth, it's like, you can't do therapy if you're hungry. You can't do therapy if you're scared shitless to go home. These are these different, we really want to be there for them. And that is therapy. It's not just sitting on a couch and talking to somebody. And by the way, we rarely sit on a couch and talk to the youth. It's always wherever they want to go. And then we do a lot of our supports for the clinical piece are supposed to be short term. Sometimes they last longer than the 15 sessions because the youth keep wanting to come back. But we really see ourselves as sort of the in-between, whether they're trying to get into a service or they're kind of graduating out of a higher level of care. That we can kind of just jump in and start while they're waiting and then hand them over, or that we can kind of help them transition into the new space that they're going to. And then again, we're low barrier, no barrier. We try to make it so that there isn't a single reason why they can't get services from us, or that we would kick them out or stop serving them. It really has to be an extreme issue for us to say no, and like an extreme safety issue, or the family. I'm sorry, if somebody can turn their mic, there you go. If outside of something very extreme, we try to never say no. And the only time that I think that we have is if there's a very serious safety issue for us, the youth or others, or they have an extreme mental health issue that needs to get treated at a much higher level of care. And we're free, no wait list. So we're like, hey,
Nice.
you have a couple, you have a family, you have a sibling, please give us a call. And if we can't, again, we will help try to find.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Amy, for sharing with us. What I've asked Amy is if you have questions, if you can go ahead and ask them in either Lisa or Amy in the chat. I'm sure they can go into the chat and answer questions. And I highly value what NOAA does, and that's why I put them on this call, is because I think I'm trying to get the word out more and more about what they're doing. It's really important work. They have a fundraiser coming up. I've asked Amy to put that information in the chat window. Really important to support them. And so I just want to appreciate all the work you're doing, and just really great presentation. So thank you. If you want to put a thumbs up or something, or applause or something in the window for them, I think that would be really cool. It's great to feel affirmed even when we're on Zoom somehow. It's hard to do.
Well,
so
thank you all for letting us come and present to you.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to hand it over now to Shonda Gullickson from CityNet. She is the training program supervisor for CityNet, and has thankfully wants to help us with some of our de-escalation talk to help us learn about that. So Shonda, I'm going to hand it over to you. I believe the screens has been shared with you, so you should be able to share your PowerPoint. And once again, I thank you so much for all the work you do.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Shanda. Like Jeff said, I am the training program supervisor for CityNet for all locations, actually. So we have locations in Riverside, Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, and also Orange County. Orange County is the area that I particularly work out of. I do so many different trainings with staff. I've done, I've started at CityNet July 1st of 2020, and I've given over 400 trainings just with staff for CityNet since starting. I love it. I hope you guys take some things away that you find useful. So I would like if Emily from CityNet would be able to unmute your microphone and let me know if you are able to see my screen in just a second.
Sure am.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Emily. So again, I'm Shanda. So what we're going to do today is talk about de-escalation the way we teach staff here at CityNet. So if you want to really learn how to de-escalate if you're a business owner, or you are a property owner, or you are just somebody who is out in the community and you are coming across somebody who is experiencing homelessness, and you want to be able to communicate with them when they are having some type of crisis situation or they are escalated in some type of way. This is how all of our staff go about it. So it's 4 steps. So if you want to write something down, or if you put your name in the chat box and let me know that you want some type of cheat sheet document afterwards, I can go ahead and send you something as well. But let's get started. So we call it the IBOC formula. So we will go through what the IBOC formula is. We're going to talk about general tips. We're going to talk about general practices. I'll also give you references as well. And I'll go through some examples that were given to me that seem to be coming up quite a bit in the Santa Barbara community. So I will go through specific ways that you can do our de-escalation technique based on these examples that were given to me. Okay, so what is the IBOC formula? This is what it is. When people are pressuring you to do or say something that you don't want to, or if they're escalated, this is how we de-escalate the situation. So these are these steps that we do, and in this order. 1, we're going to give them some type of information. Okay, that's the first thing that will come out of your mouth, whether it's somebody that's coming at you and they're asking you to do something. So let's say you come across someone who is experiencing homelessness and they are asking you if they can come and use your restroom in your facility, but they're not going to be a paid customer. So what you would not want to do right away is just tell them no. That would be something that we would do in the second step, which is setting the boundary. When you're giving information and you're giving step one, you're just giving them some type of information without saying it in a negative way. So I want you to think of it this way. I am a supervisor. I train, and then I also supervise 2 different teams with Sitting It. And if I am going to do some type of constructive criticism with my staff, I would bring them into my office, and I would never start the conversation by just telling them something to work on or something that I feel that they're not doing up to standard. I would start by telling them that they're doing something positive. So that's how it is here. We tell them something positive or neutral, and then we're going to slip in something that is more negative and something for them to work on. So in examples that I'll show you, I will show you that when we're setting boundaries, we're being very direct in what they can or cannot do, or what you will not allow them to do. But that's step 2. Okay, step 3, we're going to offer them options. So right after you tell them something that's not particularly positive, you're going to now give them options of something that you will do right away. And then we're going to end by asking them to choose one of those options. So let me show you how this goes. This is an example of how we have the IBOC formula. So let's pretend with this example that there is a homeless individual or family who is sitting inside of your hotel lobby, and you don't want them to be sitting there. So this is what you could say. First, with step 1, give the person information. So you can say something like, the hotel lobby is reserved for the use of our guests. See how I didn't say, since you're not a hotel guest, you're not able to stay here. It's definitely how you word it. So again, word the first thing out of your mouth, whatever it is that you're going to say, in some way that's positive or neutral, but not in a negative way. Okay, so then you would say a boundary. So you can say something like, unfortunately, we cannot have you sitting in our hotel lobby, but I'd be happy to talk to you about some other options. Now you're going into step 3. I can bring you water or coffee outside, or we can call your case manager together. Now, right away, you ask them the very last step, which is, which of those options would you prefer? So altogether, if I was the one that was talking to this individual, this is how it would go. The hotel lobby is reserved for the use of our guests. Unfortunately, we cannot have you sitting in our hotel lobby, but I'd be happy to talk to you about some other options. I can bring you water or coffee outside, or we can call your case manager together. Which of those options would you prefer? That way, it sounds like I'm offering things that maybe are not exactly what they want, which is to sit there in the lobby, but I am trying to be helpful, and I am trying to tell them, not that I am brushing them off and dismissing them, but I am willing to do something either for them or with them as options, and asking them to choose one of those options. So that's how we do de-escalation here at Sitting It. So here's some tips. Know why the boundaries exist. So if you're going to tell something to an individual, have something to back it up, because a lot of times the homeless individuals that we're working with, or that you're going to be coming across in the community, if you tell them that they can't do something, or that you want them to do something that's against what they want, they can look at you and think they're discriminating against me. Or they could tell that to you, you're discriminating against me because I'm homeless. Or you are not being fair because you allow this person to do this, but you're not allowing me to do this. So in cases like that, where somebody tries to argue with you, have something to back it up. So for me, I would say, if you need somebody who is sitting in a hotel lobby and they need to be a guest to be hanging out there, if you have something in writing that you can go ahead and show them, if they argue with you, that would be something tangible to be able to show the client or the individual, hey, it's not that I don't want you here and I'm trying to treat you in an unfair way. It's that this is the policy. So if all else fails, blame whatever your policy is that you have for your restaurant, for your establishment, whatever it is that you have. So that way it doesn't look like, again, you are trying to be unhelpful or discriminatory towards the individual. Also, sometimes only information is needed. So sometimes when you just give somebody information, they say, oh, I had no idea. Okay, and then that's it. There's nothing else that needs to happen from there on. You don't need to set a boundary. You don't need to give other options and ask them to choose, because it could be that they just had no idea. And as soon as you give them information or some type of policy or rule that you guys have, and they are accepting of it, then that's it. The conversation's over and everybody's happy. But a lot of times, if your individuals that you're coming across are already very escalated, then you are going to need to continue on with all 4 steps. Something else, rarely do the steps occur out of order. So when I'm training the staff and I hear them start off by saying a boundary, or even starting off with something like the word unfortunately, and then going into something, I have to correct them, because we don't want the homeless individuals to hear something negative, even something like the words unfortunately, and potentially tune out everything else that you say. So it's all about your wording and how you're saying everything to get somebody to potentially hear you and want to work with you and understand that you're trying to help them, and you're giving them options of things that you'll help them with. And so again, that's why it's all about your wording and how you're saying things and in the correct order. Always be direct and always be polite. For example, you could say something like, I'm not going to, during the boundary part. For the options part, you can say, but I'd be happy to do blank or blank. Conversations in regards to general tips and being positive. So here's some examples of what you can say to somebody. I can give you the number of another agency that does similar work to ours. They have many vouchers. So that's an option and a way you can say something in regards to an option. Now I want you to look at the screen and see where I said, I can do that for you. I'm not giving the option of saying you can find the name of another agency or numbers or contacts for another agency, because if I put it on the individual to do the work, that could sound dismissive. Another thing that you can say is, instead of you can contact again the other agency that does similar work to ours, again, I can say I would be willing to do it, or me and the individual can do it together. Okay, so I wrote down on a piece of paper just those examples that I was talking about, that I was given, just how we can do the IBOC formula with different things that I've been told are coming up in the community. So here is the first step, which is just going through the information part, but with 3 different scenarios. So for the first scenario, client is being disruptive at a business or restaurant. So how can we just give information to someone who is being disruptive at your business? You could say something like this. Our establishment is a calm, family-friendly environment. We ask everyone here follows those guidelines. Okay, now for the second scenario. Client using undesignated restroom facilities. We reserve our restroom facilities for paying customers. The third scenario, client experiencing mental health crisis. Something we could say to them is, our establishment is a calm, family-friendly environment. I feel like you're experiencing something that you're truly struggling with right now. I would like to help. Okay, we'll go into second step for all 3 scenarios. For the first one, where the client is being disruptive, you could say something like this. I cannot allow you to continue being disruptive while inside my establishment. So see how I am being very direct in what I will or will not allow, when I'm setting the boundary. So this is the step where we want you to say exactly what the person cannot do or you will not allow them to do. So that way they hear it of, okay, they gave me information and now they are telling me exactly what I'm not going to be able to do. For the second example, for the client using undesignated restroom facilities in regards to the boundary, you could say something like this. I cannot allow you to use our restrooms if you're not a paying customer. For the third example, I have client experiencing mental health crisis. You could say something like this. I'm not going to be able to allow you to continue to stay outside or inside my establishment at this time while you're struggling the way that you are. So again, we do need to be very direct when we're giving a boundary to somebody, again, so that they can hear exactly what is not going to be allowed of them or what you're not going to be accepting of at this time. So now let's go into the third part, which is options. For again, scenario one, you could say something like this. I would be happy to get you a glass of water while you take a break before coming back inside, or I can suggest a few places that are walking distance from here where you can feel free to continue on as you are. So again, it's something where I am going to do something myself, or it'll be something I will do with the individual, but I am not going to just brush off and dismiss the client to do options on their own. I hope that part makes sense, because this is very important when you are giving options to the individual who's escalated. For the second example, I can find a couple of our cheapest items for you to purchase in order to use our restrooms, or I can suggest a few businesses close by that may be able to allow you to use their restrooms. And then I have, for the third example, if you feel you need immediate medical assistance, I can call 911 for you, or I would be happy to call a family member or friend of yours to have them come and assist you. And then for the last part of it, it's the same no matter what scenario it is. It needs to be very short. It needs to be very simplified, just to sum everything up. When you're asking somebody to choose, you say something like, which of those options would you prefer? Or you can say something like, so which of those would you like to go with? Or which of those sound best to you? That way, it doesn't give them time to choose another option that they're coming up with. You're telling them to please choose one of those options that you gave to them. That's it. These are the references. It's actually our HR from CityNet who came up with this, and I totally appreciate it. And I think that having only 4 steps and knowing that they go in that particular order, no matter what type of conversation you're having, makes it pretty easy as time goes on for you being in the moment and having somebody who is very escalated, potentially cussing at you, yelling at you, causing a scene in some type of way, and distraction in front of other customers that you have, or just anybody else inside or outside of your business, that it is going to be able to, if you memorize the steps in the order that they go in, get you to just kind of get it in a habit of, okay, I know even if this person is coming at me, that these are just the steps I have to follow. And so you can keep yourself cool, calm, and collected, and just make sure that you do not become escalated back in any type of way. And if you do feel that you become escalated, make sure that you remove yourself, do some deep breathing, and then come back and talk to the individual, because 2 escalated people is not going to do anybody any good. That's it. That is my presentation.
Thank you so much. Very helpful information. We have some time for questions. So maybe other SBAC staff can also help me navigate. If people have a question for Shanda, then we can raise your hand. You can raise your hand and we'll try to get to you.
I don't know how to raise my hand, but I have a question.
Okay, all right.
I first of all, thank you, Shanda. This is fantastic. I as a therapist, working with a lot of youth and families that are often escalated and trying to de-escalate the situation. I love how you make it very simple and just easy for everybody to follow. I mean, I should say easy, it looks easy on paper. It's not always so easy in practice. And that's, I guess, what my question is about is, do you guys coach or help people walk through, or do you set like sort of ambassadors at each side at different businesses as sort of like the leaders of the, that can kind of role model with the rest of their team or anything? Is there any kind of additional support like that?
So I can answer that question for you. So with the ambassadors, they are partnered with CityNet through a text thread, and they are there as like liaisons between PD and case managers. We will be providing this training most likely to the ambassadors as well. This is being inspired from what Shanda teaches our case managers at CityNet. And so what we wanted to do is apply a skill that we use for case managers and then promote it to neighborhoods, neighbors, residents, and business owners so that they too can access these skills in a very easy, simple way. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
So I think what you're kind of suggesting is that the hotel or the business should come up with kind of their own internal strategy for their staff with some of these boundaries kind of preset, and then they can all use the same kind of language, correct?
Definitely. Yes, Jeff. I would say that for the business owners, the hotel owners, the residents, property owners, and property managers, it's really going about creating, like I said, a 4-step process where you don't start off by being negative, even if the individual is being very disruptive in their business or out in front of their business or residents, but coming across as just giving information about what your policy is. So if someone's being disruptive, saying here inside of our hotel lobby, we have a very calm, family-friendly environment. Instead of starting off by saying, we can't allow you to stay here when you're being disruptive, because we want to not to have people tune us out as soon as we open our mouths. And so if you can allow people to start off just giving some type of positive or neutral information to the individual, and then go into setting a very clear boundary and giving other options for them to go with and asking them to choose one of those options, more likely than not, you will be able to de-escalate the situation. As long as they don't have a weapon or become violent in that situation, then we wouldn't have you or have the individual trying to talk them through that if that were to happen. But this is for a non-confrontational de-escalation techniques. This is what I definitely would suggest. And I've seen it many times. You also can use it though in other situations. Like if you have someone, an individual who's coming up and they're asking for something and we're not able to do that for them. So say it's someone who is a hotel owner and they have an individual who comes in and asks them to use their restroom facility, but we're not able to allow them that. So they're not escalated, but we still can't let them do what they're asking for. You can still go through the IBOC formula. And again, just give them information, tell them what they're not able to do, and then give them other options and have them choose. So it's for both scenarios, when someone's escalated or if someone's asking you to do something, we're asking for something and we can't allow them to do it for whatever reason.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Roger. He's got his hand up.
Roger, you are muted still.
Thank you. I think this would be really good for the bicycle officers, the bicycle cops, because I've watched them and quite a number of times I see them take the wrong approach. And I definitely think if they're going to be on the bicycles and they're going to be approaching homeless, this would be an excellent technique to teach them.
Well, I appreciate your feedback.
Yeah.
Our next presentation is going to be with SBPD, so they can speak to to that as well and what their current training is. But thank you, Roger.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think one of the most important points too that Shanda brings up is the fact that our population is often discriminated against and often told they can't do things, they can't be here, they can't sit here, they can't, breathe here. And so it's really, really important that we start with that positive rapport. It's the most important thing that we do in the field as case managers is we're approaching people with kindness. And we're offering gifts and goodies to kind of build that trust and rapport. And we're not starting from that disciplinary place. It is going to activate and trigger past traumas and past instances where people are feeling discriminated against. And so if you guys want to create the best results from these interactions, kill them with kindness every time. So thank you, Shanda, for bringing up that really, really important point.
So the good news is we have people that are stuck with us every week. We have Emily, who's kind of going to be stranded on Rap Island, as well as various members of SBPD and Behavioral Wellness that are going to be walking with us. So as we continue to encounter situations, we will have ongoing help for all of you with de-escalation. Shanda, I really appreciate your time and everything that you've brought to us. And I really encourage all of the business owners and residents and hotel owners to come up with a plan ahead of time for this de-escalation strategy with your staff across the board, because I think that will ultimately help you. These are strategies I've learned at Alameda Park every week work with people on the streets and the meal sharing, and multiple times having the right strategy has helped de-escalate a situation that could have got worse. So really appreciate your time. And now I'm going to turn the microphone over to Officer Craig Burley, who I'm very thankful for. Since beginning this work, I have worked with him in various different ways, from the meal sharing, from directly on the streets to just seeing him at the various coffee places and checking in on all the great work his team has historically done. So we're going to hand it over to you now.
Jeff, can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, the two presentations. I've worked many years with NOAA's Anchorage. I think the city of Santa Barbara and the sheriff's or the Santa Barbara County should be so lucky to have NOAA's Anchorage in our city. For many, many years, I've worked with the staff of NOAA's Anchorage, and truly there's many agencies that are helping the homeless, and then there is a specific homeless clientele in our community, which is the teenage youth. And for many, many years, I've watched what NOAA's Anchorage has done for our homeless youth. And I cannot say as much praise for NOAA's Anchorage and the staff members. Secondly, CityNet. They are new to the city of Santa Barbara, and for 20 years I've worked the homeless population. I've been watching Emily's crew work in the street, boots on the ground, on State Street, Milpas Street, and the beach area, and they are doing an incredible job. They are kind of new players to our city. So big shout out to NOAA's Anchorage and CityNet. And then today's dedication, I want to dedicate my presentation to Father John. I believe if you have worked the mentally ill or homeless population in the city of Santa Barbara County, Isla Vista, if you don't know Father John, he has probably got the biggest heart in the whole wide world. So I dedicate my presentation. Every day I walk the walk with Father John in my heart to help the mentally ill and the homeless population in city, Santa Barbara County, and Isla Vista, obviously. So my partner, Jeff, are you able to unmute my partner, Jennifer, who's on this call? She's so dedicated to our unit that she's actually on vacation, but I see, is there a way to unmute Jennifer, Jeff?
I'm unmuted.
Oh, perfect. So I'm going to introduce myself. Jeff gave me 2 hours for this presentation, so I will use the full 2 hours. There is a test at the end, so make sure you pay attention. And then Jennifer will be my translator too. So I've had the honor to work for the city of Santa Barbara for 20 plus years. 19 as a police officer, 19 years as a street cop, 10 plus years working mental health court, veterans court, and restorative court. 4 years as a beat coordinator, 15 years as a team leader on the hostage crisis team. I negotiate with my wife and 4 children, so that is probably the best expertise. And for the last 10 years, I've waited for this position called CIT, which is Crisis Intervention Team / co-response. Co-response is I get the honor to work in a police car with someone from CARE / Be Well, and I'm honored to be working with Jennifer, who's going to introduce herself. I think the city of Santa Barbara, the county, as literally, we have a winner with Jennifer, her past experience, and us working the street together. So Jennifer, you can spend 30 minutes talking about yourself.
Oh my gosh. Well, in a nutshell, I'm Jennifer Leonard, and the last year I've been working as South County Crisis Supervisor for Santa Barbara County. And in addition to that, before that, I should say, I was working for several years up in Oregon, developing programs similar to the one that we are developing with the city of Santa Barbara, Santa Barbara PD, and that is a co-response model. Several of the models throughout the country are sort of what you see with mobile crisis, and that's where folks are, mental health clinicians are responding in separate cars to the scene, and of course there's always going to be some wait times there, but yeah, the teams that I've worked in were co-response, so that's basically an office that's a patrol car for me or any clinicians, and it really means partnering with our law enforcement, local law enforcement partners, and so yeah, so that's what I've been doing the last year and then several years before that. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. I worked for actually 4 counties up in Oregon, and it's really interesting just seeing the difference in just different styles. I mean, there's so many ways to go about creating a co-response team, and picking various folks who have the sort of good team sort of temperament for the job. So in any case, there's always a different dynamic. I'm pleased to be working with Santa Barbara PD, and yeah, so that's in a nutshell.
And then basically under Chief Lunho, and I want to thank Lieutenant Kushner and Sergeant Dijon. I've been dreaming about doing this for 10 years, but under their leadership, it actually happened. They tested for the position. I was fortunate to get the position last year. It did take a couple of weeks to get boots on the ground. In other words, what do we do is basically 4 days a week. We work from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And basically what we do is we monitor the radio with the city of Santa Barbara, and we respond as a partnership in the same police car, any call for service in dealing with someone in crises or suicidal or is having a bad day. I have the tools in my police car where traditionally the Santa Barbara Police Department will respond to someone in crisis or possibly suicidal, and then we would wait several minutes or even hours for a mental health professional from coming out from the county to assess that client of ours. So what we do as co-response, literally I have my partner Jennifer, who has all the training and experience in mental health, that can assess the client who is in crisis, de-escalate that subject. It doesn't mean every time that we're dealing with someone that's in crisis or mentally ill that they're going to the hospital. That's the furthest we want them to do. We want to be able to talk to them, have the time. Patrol is always very busy, so when we respond, we have the luxury and time to help that client in crisis. And that, if you think about it, that could be anyone in our community. That could be our brother, sister, mother and father that is in crisis. And we have the luxury and honor to help that client in our community look for answers, resources. It doesn't mean that they're going to the hospital on a 5150 hold. Family members contact us to help their loved ones, and then that's what we get to do every day. We work together. So our main mission is to help the citizens of Santa Barbara that are in crises, also help patrol that are very busy, as you know, working our streets. We get to go and help someone in crisis, and we have the connections and the resources to connect that client of ours that's in crises. We do get a lot of referrals in-house, in other words, through different departments like the Detective Bureau, dispatch, where loved ones are calling the police for help with a loved one in crises. Another part of our unit or our mission is the gun violence restraining order, which literally since myself and Jennifer have working the street together, it's amazing that we've been able to get guns and rifles off the street to keep our community safe. So that's just one small element of our unit. I know that our unit, we've saved lives since we've been put into full-time mode. One of the examples you may have seen is the lady up in the tree in the courthouse gardens, sunken gardens, 50 feet up in a tree. We got the honor to work with that female in crisis, who maybe not everyone would know from the media is a decorated Marine veteran who was in crisis in our city. And we were, with the fire department, able to de-escalate the situation, build rapport, and under less than an hour, a lady that was 50 foot up a tree was safely taken care of by the fire department, medics, and got the help that she needed because she was in crisis 50 feet up in a tree. So that's just one of the examples that you may not know about. Jennifer, do you have anything to add?
Nope, I don't really have anything to add. I was able to tour the Noah's Anchorage when they reopened, and so impressed by that. Just a beautiful facility, and also CityNet. Of course, we cross paths all the time with CityNet, so it's great to see them here as well.
So following up on the second presentation of dealing with someone that's in personal crisis. So basically, if a citizen of Santa Barbara or a business owner, if they do contact someone that is in crisis, just remember that is another human being, and their frustration or their acts of acting mentally ill may not be directly towards you. They may not even know that you are there. So if in your heart, if you feel that you can't de-escalate that person, obviously personal safety is most important. So obviously call 911. In my presentation, I gave you my business card as well as Jennifer's business cards that you can contact my work number, my email for follow-up. When COVID is over, we're more than happy to do presentations, just like Emily's crew for businesses when COVID is over. Or if you have questions about a family member, a loved one that is in crisis, my goal, because I have two family members that are mentally ill, so I take it very personally, is if I can help you or find a resource, that's my goal, right? I get paid every day to come to work to help people, and that's why I have my business card with my work number and email. And also Jennifer, with the 211, that is a Santa Barbara County. Jennifer can probably add on to this. This is a number that you can give out to people that are in crisis or looking for resources. It's manned or staffed 24 hours a day where that person that's in crisis or looking for resources, homelessness, mentally ill, but also COVID is something that you can give as a resource. And then I am a person that I will not give that resource unless I called it. So last week when I was working, I actually called 211, identified myself looking for resources, and there was a human at the other end of the line that was staff, and that was very helpful. So when I say call 211, I've actually vetted that number and quizzed them. So I'm gonna hand it over to Jennifer, maybe anything more about 211 and that really good service.
Yeah, I believe 211 is nationwide. So we do have the nationwide number. We also have the local access number. And I'll get that. I don't have that one memorized, but I will put that in the chat. The access line are clinicians, they're licensed therapists. And so they're answering those calls and sort of triaging. So they're a bit of a catch-all, but they also have the tools at their disposal, you know, just as far as being really knowledgeable about local resources. So these are our Santa Barbara resources. And again, I'll put that in the chat here in a sec, but access line will, you know, get calls, all kinds of calls. They can, for example, you know, send folks to either the crisis services. They can identify, you know, folks that are sort of needing ongoing counseling, you know, walk them through their own insurance if they have insurance, and look at providers there, you know. So it's everything from crisis to just general services. So it can even be like housing or substance abuse type services. So they're very knowledgeable. And that'll be the access line. That's our local line. It's also a mandate that every county has a crisis line that's 24/7. So that is ours, is the access line.
So I just want to say thank you to my partner, Jennifer. I just want to take the time to say thank you to my partner, Jennifer, who actually is on vacation. So I'm ordering you back to vacation. And then for you, Jeff, I think open up to questions. And then again, I want to close that we do this in memory of Father John today.
Absolutely. If anyone has questions, if you want to raise your hand, we'll get to your questions regarding anything that came up. I'm not seeing anything unless somebody else is seeing something.
So can we do the test?
We can do the test. Put the link in the chat room.
After Roger's question.
Oh, Roger, go ahead.
And he's on mute.
Burley, can we like if I'm out on the street and I'm working with the homeless and I see a crisis, is there any way that we can contact you directly?
Yeah. I'll give you my work number. Do you have a cell phone?
Yes.
Are you ready for it?
Text it to me. I'll give you mine.
All right, put it in. Can you put it in the chat?
Yes, I'll put it in the chat for you, Burley.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Everyone in the world will have your number, Roger, if you put it on the call.
I know.
Everyone's going to be calling you, Roger. Maybe you want that. Maybe that'd be fun.
No. Well, if they're all the good people that are listening, I don't have a problem with that.
Well, I've got a quick question for Chuck Madsen. I see him on the call because he's got a new role that I think is really valuable when it comes to everything we've talked about right now. If you want to go briefly into what your role is, because I think that's really important to know too, of how we're trying to make sure that people that call the access line are getting services relatively rapidly. I think that's really important too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. So I am Chuck Madsen. I am the Alcohol and Drug Service Specialist for the County of Santa Barbara Department of Behavioral Wellness. And also my new role is the South County Care Coordinator. So at any time, that access line that was listed in the chat. If any individual, youth or adult, calls that access line and needs assistance connecting to any of the programs that Department of Behavioral Wellness contracts with, it is my job to connect and assist those clients with connecting to programs, whether it be obtaining Medi-Cal, getting a medical clearance, getting a COVID test, getting transportation, whatever that is. We have two positions. The county just started these positions, one for North County and one for South County. And I am your new South County person. I'd also like to share real quickly about our new MAT access point, which is on Camino del Remedio, right next to Public Health. Both of these things that I'm sharing about are in response to our opioid epidemic, and getting those clients or individuals connected to programs as quickly as possible to reduce the amount of overdoses, withdrawal symptoms, and things like that. So the MAT access point is also accessed through our access line. And anybody that wishes to get off of any opioids, pills, heroin, any opiates like that, can call the access line. When they call the access line, they can say, I spoke to Chuck Madsen, and I would like to get services through the MAT access point. We now have the ability to bring somebody in within 24 hours, connect them to a doctor, get them a prescription of Suboxone or some opioid replacement medication, get them stabilized, get them housed in the sobering center, which is right across the parking lot from our access point, and then have them on that prescription for up to a week, where we will then connect them to one of our providers within our county. And what that has done and worked really well for is our homeless population. We have worked closely with the IV shelter, the pop-up shelter in IV, to have a couple individuals out there through that access point. And then when we get them stabilized, we can connect them to residential services, which ultimately connects them to housing and all the other supportive services in our county. But the first step is to get them off of those, IV drugs or pills or whatever they're using, and get them stabilized in a functioning manner. So happy to share a little bit about that. I will put my email in the chat and my work cell phone number. So feel free to call me at any time if you have any questions. And if you shoot me an email, I will shoot you flyers, connect you flyers for our MAT access point, and any of the other new services that we have at Santa Barbara County Department of Behavioral Wellness. Hope that was short enough, Jeff. You're muted.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yep.
Thanks, Chuck. Glad to have you in South County, working more directly, selfishly with us.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Jeff.
And Robin has a question, so I'm gonna go over to Robin.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for putting this all together. And thank you all for such excellent presentations and all the quality work you're doing day after day. I'm wondering, Officer Burley, if you could speak a little bit about what has really changed, or how severe, how additionally challenging is it now in the pandemic? Is there, a percentage that you would say that we have, that we've gotten ourselves into based on the pandemic? I've heard nationally they're calling it a mental health crisis along with the pandemic. Would you say that that is the case here? And, love to talk collectively about solutions as well.
So I think everyone in the last year has seen the increase in mental health calls for service. I hear on the radio as a police officer. I know we are much busier dealing with people in crisis. I think everyone has been affected. I think we're coming up within a couple of days of 1 year of living in a pandemic. I think actually Noah's Anchorage probably can also back me up. I think the biggest crisis that I see is with our youth in our community. I used to work as a beat coordinator, so I was really, really vested in our youth, working with the Police Activities League. and then just that whole circle of friends. I still pop in and talk to the caseworkers that are dealing with our teenagers. I think the saddest thing about the pandemic is our teenagers, our kids. I think that would be my red flag, is mental health of our children or teenagers. I think everyone personally and professionally, they're dealing with the pandemic in their own family, circle of friends. And I think it's our children that I think that we need to really focus on now, because we're in 1 year of the pandemic. So we see it on the street, we see it on State Street, but we see it in the calls for service of assisting family members with teenagers in crisis. So that is a great question. And I think for resources through our community, everyone's suffering, old and young, but I think the red flag for me is our children in crisis.
Yeah, and I would absolutely second that. You know, the only reason why we are not fuller than we are is because we are restricted with how many youth we can serve at one given point. We've had to go on quarantine, I think 3 or 4 different times, because we are, you know, obviously working with a high risk population that with regard to COVID. We see with and I think the ripple effect of this within families is just, it's a tip of the iceberg what we see right now. When you take a young person who we all require contact and outside air and some freedom and all these kinds of things, but a young person in particular has very special needs to be able to be around their friends. They are now stuck at home, often with their parents who are frustrated trying to work, or they've lost their job. The Zoom, any of you who have small children, I mean, I thought I was going to throw my laptop out the window and my granddaughter stayed with me. Just the process of it was so challenging and unfulfilling for them. They don't feel connected. They are inside, they're not exercising as much. I mean, there's just so many things that are happening. And so I really worry about that. I see an increase in sort of emotional, verbal altercations and what we would consider abuse, where the frustrations are just really, really high within the families, as you know, is totally understandable. And then again, I think the most important thing we need to remember is in the past, where if youth were being abused at home, at least when they went to school, they were not around the abuser. Right now, if you've got parents, and again, I do not want to pathologize or vilify parents who lose their cool or who have not learned how to parent in a healthy, safe way. But if you add the pandemic and the isolation and financial strain or stress or housing stress on top of all of that, and you're stuck at home with 2 or 3 kids, even 1 kid, you can imagine the kind of abuse that goes on. We know domestic violence is up, we know child abuse is up, but where do the kids get to tell anybody? Because if they're not going to school, they cannot tell a teacher, they can't tell their friend's mom because they're not going over to the house. This is where we really are starting to see this like fracture and rupture. So I think even after the pandemic, you know, when we get all these vaccines through and people start to kind of go back to normal life, hopefully towards the end of this year, there's going to be a ripple effect, because I believe that these youth and families have lost like a year of growth in terms of going outdoors. We like as human beings, our minds have to be constantly challenged with new things. If you're stuck in a house, you have nothing to look at but each other and the walls and your own crap. And so I think that we also have to make sure that we're really ready for when those doors open up again too. And we don't just think, oh, everybody's going to be okay. But I totally agree that like our kids right now are really struggling on many different levels.
So I want to go ahead and wrap this up, and I want to give Officer Burley enough time to honor Father John Hedges. So I want to thank all the presenters. This was a great call. I really appreciate all the time you put into all your presentations. Primarily all the work you're doing is fantastic. That's why you were invited on this call, because it's generally you're doing great work, all of you. So I want to appreciate all of your work. And I also want to go back to highlighting Noah's, and on these wrap calls as SB Act, like I said, we're trying to navigate reducing the impacts on the whole community. And so if you have if you have resources, if you have ways to support NOAAs, I strongly encourage you to help them out. The work they're doing is so valuable. And so I'm just going to remind you of that. And we will send out minutes following this up with all the emails and information that came from this call. And we have all the weekly calls scheduled again for next week. So thanks, everyone. I'm going to throw it over to Officer Burley, and then we'll end the call.
So everyone that's on this call, again, thank you for taking the time. We're going to get through this together, this pandemic. And in Father John's name, just do something nice for a stranger or a loved one, and just bring it all back down to Father John, because that's what it's all about. That's it, Jeff.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Great job with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.